This is Outnumbered. I'm Kaylee McEnany. Here today, my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Emily Campagno, former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus, and in the center virtual seat today, Joey Jones, retired Marine bomb technician who served in Afghanistan. He is also a Fox Nation host. Morgan, I was listening to some sound from Director of National Intelligence John Radcliffe, who said that President Trump said to him, if we do not first secure a peace agreement, which was all part of that conditions-based withdrawal, if we don't first secure that, how quickly will Afghanistan fall to the Taliban? John Radcliffe said, very quickly, sir, and Mr. President said back, it would be my guess that it would fall in 2 days. And apparently he repeated this 2-day refrain over and over again because he understood before you withdraw, you must secure the peace agreement, which is exactly what he was doing. Morgan, is it your assessment, too, this would have never happened on the watch of President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo?
I think that's what makes it so challenging and really emotional for me and so many others this week, Kaylee. I was just texting with someone who worked very closely with General Miller, for the last 2 years in Afghanistan, and we all are devastated for the loss of life. Obviously, Joey's the Marines. I was commissioned into the Navy Reserves in 2014, and whenever we lose our people the way we did yesterday, it's awful, right? There's no words to describe, and I feel like what makes it a little bit more awful is the fact that we felt like, we maybe could have possibly prevented this from happening. And so what I am really focused on going forward is outcomes. What is this administration going to do? I think what they thought is perhaps ISIS could reconstitute the way it did in 2009, 2010 after President Obama withdrew. Remember that the Biden officials that are overseeing this whole effort are the same people that oversaw the 2009, 2010 withdrawal of troops from Iraq. And then, of course, we saw al-Qaeda in Iraq turn into ISIS. We saw people's heads getting chopped off on national television, and that's when President Obama and his team decided to do something about ISIS. So I think this team thought, well, maybe we'll have a couple years before the terrorists start to take over again. And instead, you're seeing immediate ISIS attacks on our troops. So again, I'm focused on outcomes and what we can do going forward. I have a lot of thoughts about that hopefully we can get into in the show. But the plan, the counterterrorism plan for what we're going to do in Afghanistan has to be put into place now. And enough of this over-the-horizon stuff. I mean, come on. It's not practical.
The outrage over the American deaths from a terror attack in Kabul yesterday is now worsened as we learn that the U.S. gave the Taliban the names of Americans and Afghan allies it wanted to evacuate, a move that a defense official says effectively created a kill list. When asked about the existence of such a list, here's what President Biden had to say.
And there have been occasions when our military has contacted their military counterparts in the Taliban and said, this, for example, this bus is coming through with X number of people on it, made up of the following group of people. We want you to let that bus or that group through. So yes, there have been occasions like that. And to the best of my knowledge, in those cases, the bulk of that has occurred, they've been let through. But I can't tell you with any certitude that there's actually been a list of names. I know there may have been, but I know of no circumstance.
Morgan, there seems to be a fine line, however, between publishing those names, as the president just outlined, and, for example, Admiral Kirby in the Pentagon briefing we just heard saying that, well, we only disseminate information to our, quote, allies to an extent that cooperation is required, but sharing is sharing. Information transfer is information transfer. And as I said earlier, not only is it A, not reliable, but it B, publishes those who have ties with us. That seems to me uncontrovertible, at least in part as a concept here, that information can be used, and there's an amount of faith the United States is extending that it won't be used for a nefarious purpose.
So I think Joey can get into some of the logistics on the ground and why you would need to share information in an operation. Let me explain to the audience what happens in something that we call the downgrade process. I've been in the intelligence community for most of my career. So what happens in what we call the downgrade process is you'll have sensitive intelligence that you often need to share with another country. And that, in order to be able to share that, that goes through tons of checks. So whoever owns the intelligence has to check. All of the agencies have to clear off on it. It's a laborious process because the information is so sensitive. And typically, Ezra Cohen-Watnick pointed this out, who was also a defense official for intelligence for President Trump. Typically, these countries or whomever you're sharing the intelligence with also goes through a human rights vetting, because you want to make sure if you're sharing intelligence on individuals that the people receiving the information don't have a bad human rights record. Well, spoiler alert, the Taliban does. So what happened here is that somebody in the process, it might have been someone at the NSC, had to go over all of the established procedures, norms, everything that people go through in the intelligence community to downgrade information. Someone had to sign off on that, and I think, as Harris noted earlier, that's one of the silos of information and investigations that we'll need to find out.
This was a meeting, Morgan, that had gotten delayed because of the explosions that killed so many people outside of the Kabul airport gates yesterday. So we knew it was coming. And then from Naftali Bennett, we knew that this would be their first meeting. And he thought it was important to say this: Israel's nuclear pursuit, their capability, is the most important thing that we'll talk about today, Mr. President. Your thoughts?
Well, it is, Harris, because it is an existential threat to the state of Israel, right? You have their greatest enemy, the Islamic Republic of Iran, which threatens almost on a daily basis to annihilate the state of Israel. So that's going to be a big problem for Naftali Bennett, for the new prime minister, if this administration goes down the path that the Obama administration did, which is giving billions of dollars in sanctions relief to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. I thought it was very interesting what President Biden said at the beginning. I was listening closely. He said that Iran was never going to get a nuclear weapon, that he was working for diplomatic efforts towards that. That's a really important statement to me, because that's a red line, in my opinion. President Trump was very clear about that. He took Soleimani's head off to prove it about a year and a half ago. And so if President Biden is serious about Iran not getting a nuclear weapon, they are breaking their commitments right now as it relates to centrifuges. And international nuclear watchdogs are going over this. So I'm not going to get in the weeds on that, but I can tell you they're breaking their commitments right now. And if President Biden is going to stand by what he just said, that Iran was never going to get a nuclear weapon, I've got some policies to talk to him about.
Yeah, I wish you could get together with him. That'd be fascinating. Fascinating. Emily, real quickly, as we head to commercial, your thoughts?
That it was so refreshing to hear a leader be unequivocal and be strong. I really appreciated the Prime Minister's statement when he said, quote, "Be strong so we can do good." It was such a stark contrast, frankly, from what we've been hearing from our Commander-in-Chief these last few days. And it also struck me that it seemed to be some memory loss there, to everyone's points here, that the conversation was occurring almost as if in a vacuum, ignoring this ignition happening there in Afghanistan, and ignoring the last 4 years as well, especially with President Biden's skipping over and commenting on President Barack Obama's work. I felt like, as ordinary Americans watching, I think, have a longer, more full memory of that. It frankly concerns me for the future as well, but I hope that, I know we're running out of time, but I'd like to hear Morgan's thoughts moving on a little bit ahead in terms of the intelligence and how this affects the situation there now in Iran, given the Afghanistan, the fact that it's a metastasizing tumor, and that means a spreading cancer. I think we have a worse future ahead of us than we do in the present, and that's the most frightening.
Yeah, just a reminder to everybody
is,
that sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to remind the audience that Al-Qaeda senior leadership is given safe haven in Iran. That's where they live. That's how this all ties together.
Well, I was going to find a ray of sunshine, but no, because that is the truth. You speak the truth. All right.
How was he? How was his mood? How was he in dealing with with the incoming information? How was he in asking the questions of military commanders, etc.?
Well, I would say that anyone who's watched the president up close, which is most of you, knows that the putting the lives of servicemen and women at risk, and those decisions that you have to make as commander-in-chief weigh heavily on him.
So the question was, how is he doing? It reminds me of the first briefing where one of the questions is, how is he feeling? He's waited a long time to be in the Oval Office. Morgan, a stark difference there from the Pentagon press corps, who has done a really, really good job at asking questions I think the American people deserve to have answered.
Yeah, they've been really tough in holding the administration accountable, and that's what we need from a media, from an independent press corps. I will say, listen, this had to be a horrible day for the president and his team. I mean, you don't lose that many Americans in combat, especially when you promised an orderly exit from Afghanistan. Just a few months ago, the president was promising that there wouldn't be chaos, that it wouldn't be Saigon. In fact, it looks worse than all the scenarios any of us even predicted. And so this is why we need media to hold people accountable, and this is why you're seeing it at the Pentagon briefing room, as you talked about, Kaylee, because we were promised by this president multiple times a set of outcomes in leaving Afghanistan that didn't happen. And so I'm not, I'm actually not faulting him for his performance yesterday. It's not the type of command leadership that I want to see from the commander-in-chief. I agree with Emily. There was times that I was nervous and thought, oh gosh, what's happening when he got very quiet. But I have no doubt that everybody in that White House said it was one of the most gut-wrenching days of their careers. And it should be. They have a lot to answer for.
The flags are at half-staff because we lost lives, and those are heroes. Let's honor them. If you don't know where else to turn with your emotions today, turn towards gratitude and honor. Floyd Holly, Daniel Greer, Adam Benjamin, those are the names that I know. We'll learn their names from yesterday, and let's honor them.
Amen. Say their names.
Absolutely.
Great to see everybody. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Now let's go to America Reports.